Hello everyone, so we're back with a new project, and what we are making is this, which is what I've called the Spring to Summer figure 8 cardigan, because that is basically what it is. It's a spring to summer weight cardigan made in figure 8 stitch. Excuse my quality artwork here, but hopefully it gives you a rough idea. So for this cardigan we are using this loom, which is the 41 peg round loom, and we're going to be knitting it sideways. So we're going to cast on the sleeve over here, we're going to knit the sleeve, cast on the extra pegs to knit the other panels, and then cast off again to make the other sleeve. So the first thing you're going to need to do is decide what yarn you're going to use, and knit up a couple of swatches. You really need two swatches. You need one for the cuff, which is going to be a knit one, purl one rib, and you're going to need one for the figure 8 stitch here. I've actually only got the figure 8 stitch one that I did written on this piece of paper. The yarn that I am using is this, which is Knit UK Cotton Rich Chunky, and it says it's suitable for needles and hooks of 6 to 7 millimeters, which is great for the for that big loom. It works really well as one strand on that. There's 110 meters on here. I'm hoping I've bought enough. So yeah, that's the yarn that I'm using if you want to use the same yarn. And this was I knitted a swatch of 10 pegs and 20 rows, and I got a width of 4 inches and a length of 9 inches. And I used that to work out how many pegs and rows I needed. Now you don't need to do too much in the way of working out. And if you go to my website, I've actually got a very quick post which shows you how to work out how many pegs you need. I used to have a video on my site, but I took it down because it was very long-winded and complicated, and I thought, I can do this better. So for the moment, though, I haven't made a new video. I've just written a short blog post, but it's very, very simple. So please don't be scared or put off by the idea of having to do this. It's not complicated. And all you need to do is work out how many pegs you need to cast on for your cuff, and how many pegs you need to cast on for your sleeve, because we're going to cast on the cuff and then we're going to work that, and then we're going to increase to the rest of the pegs to give the fullness in the sleeve. And you also need to work out how many, if you can hear that, that's my cat wanting to come in, she'll have to wait. You also need to work out how many rows you need to actually knit for the sleeve. So where you get your measurements from, if you take a garment that already fits you fairly well, so I've got a cardigan here which I quite like, and I'm going to use this, or I have rather used this for my measurements. Now, for the width of the sleeve, the overall width of the sleeve, you need to measure from like here, which is like the armpit, and you need to measure straight up. So mine actually comes out at about 9 inches, but I think I've done it 8. Yeah, I did it 8, or 8.5 actually. That comes out, so I think I did it 8. So you need to measure from the armpit straight up to get the width of the sleeve. The length is fairly self-explanatory. I can't really fit all of this into the frame, but yeah, you need to measure from the armpit down to, oops, it's going, down to the bottom of the sleeve, and mine comes out at about 16 inches. For the cuff, now, what you need to do is measure at the widest point of the cuff, which is up here where the other knitting is. Don't do it down here because it's going to be narrower. So I allowed, yeah, that's about 4 inches. So I allowed 4 inches for mine. And then you will also need to flip this thing over, and again, I can't fit the whole thing in the frame, but you basically need to measure across the back to get, and again, don't measure the ribbing section at the bottom of any garment. You want to be measuring, across here, and mine comes out at, as you can see, around 20 inches, so that's what I've allowed for mine. So, to recap, you need to measure the sleeve across the cuff at the widest point. You need to measure the sleeve from the armpit down to the end of the cuff. You need to measure the sleeve from the armpit straight up to get the width of it, and then you need to measure across the whole back. And when you've got those measurements, you can then go and work out how many pegs you need to cast on for the cuff, how many you need for the sleeve, and how many rows you need to knit for the sleeve. Now, you don't need to worry about working out rows or anything for the width of this, because the loom is going to be used for the length of our garment, and you will just knit across the back to the width you've got. So in my case, it will be 20 inches that I need to knit just going across, and you can just measure that as you're going. Right, so it's quite simple. We're going to cast on the cuff, we're going to knit the cuff, and then we're going to increase to the rest of the pegs for the sleeve, and then we're going to increase to the rest of the loom, knit across the body, decrease, and knit the other sleeve. This is for the back of this thing. We'll deal with the fronts when we come to them. So let's grab the loom and grab some yarn and start knitting. So we're going to use my special little cast on that I demonstrated in a recent video, and if you want to know how to do that, you can go and check out the video because I won't go into too much detail here. But you first of all need to cast on however many pegs you worked out for your cuff. So in my case it's 12. So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. Just a regular old E-wrap cast on we're doing here. And knit those off. Oops. This yarn is a little bit splitty. It seems to get better as it goes along. It starts off at the end being a bit splitty. I had to cut some, like a couple of inches off mine because it was too splitty. I'm going to turn around, get my working yarn out the way, grab that loop and remount it. As I say, I'm not going to go into too much detail here about this because you can just go and watch that other video I did. Remount them. I'll be back in just one sec. Right, so I've got all of my cast on done, and I've remounted those loops to get them out of the way. And all you're going to do is knit those extra loops off as one loop. So, and I warn you, they are a little bit tight, this first row, so go easy with it and just take your time. Once you get past this, it's fine. So we're going to do a knit one, purl one, rib for this. So the first stitch is obviously just our knit. If you need to, you can knit off these extra loops individually if it's easier. Just knit them off. Next one is a purl, so we're going to put our working yarn below the loop. We're going to reach down with our hook, scoop up that working yarn like so, and I'm going to have to put this down on the table to do this. Remove the old loops and put the new one on. So that's our purl. And now I knit. Oops, see, that's, you have to be careful there. Now a purl. Reach down, scoop up the loop, remove the old loop, or loops in this case, and put the new one on. That's a purl. So I'll just finish going across here and then I'll be back. So I've come to the end of my row, and I would actually normally end with a purl here because of the knit one, purl one pattern, but I'm not going to. I'm actually going to put 2 knits at the end because I don't like having purls at the end of my work. So if you're in the same situation, just end with another knit. It's really not going to make a lot of difference in the cuff just to have these 2 knits next to each other. So when you get to the end, you're just going to go back. So you've done 1 row of your rib and you're going to do 6 altogether. You're going to go back following the same pattern. So all of the purls that you purled before, you're going to purl again, and all of the knits you're going to knit. So obviously, as I said, I ended with a knit. I have 2 knits next to each other. So knit, and then I have my pearl. And you can see it's much easier this time because I've got rid of those extra loops. And you're going to just go back knitting and purling, and you're going to basically do that for 6 rows in total, and then we'll come back and start the increases for the rest of the sleeve. Right, I've done my 6 rows of cuff. There we are, 6 rows of ribbing for the cuff, knit 1, purl 1. And we're now ready to start the pattern. Now we're going to increase from at the end of this very first row of figure 8 that we're going to do, and then we're going to increase every other row after that. So basically we're going to knit across here doing figure of 8, we're going to increase an extra stitch here, then we're going to knit back this way and do another increase until you've increased all of your extra pegs for your sleeve. So in my case I need to go from 12 pegs to 20, so I'm going to do 1 increase every other row until I've got to 20 pegs. But we're going to start with the figure 8 stitch, and very quickly how to do this is you knit the first peg and then take your working yarn behind the back of the next 2 pegs like this, round peg 3, through the middle, round peg 2 and through the middle, and then knit them off. Your working yarn is now here, so you're going to go across the next 2 pegs, round that one, through the middle, round that one, through the middle. You're literally making like a figure 8. Let's see if I can show you from above. So here's our working yarn here now. You're basically knitting each peg twice really. So your working yarn is now here. You're going to take it behind the next 2 pegs, wrap that one through the middle, wrap that one through the middle, so you get that figure of 8, and then knit them off. And you're going to do that all the way along. So when I get to the end of this first row, I'll come back and show you the increase. So I'm just coming to the end of this first row of figure of 8, and you always end up with 1 peg left at the end, which you just knit off. So we're ready to make our first increase now. So to do that, we're literally just going to add on an extra peg. So you're going to wrap the peg once, wrap the peg twice, and then just knit that off like that, and you've made an increase. So now we're going to come back. So this has basically become the first peg of your next row. So you're immediately just going to knit that off again, like so, and then you can start your figure of 8 pattern again. So we're going to go back the other way. And that's our first increase done. So I now have 13 pegs. You will have whatever you have. And we're going to keep going back. So what you're going to do now is you're going to work rows, adding your increases onto this end. If you add one on this end, you've done it wrong. You need to add them on this end, away from the anchor peg, until you've got all of the increases that you need, right up to the number of pegs that you need. And when you've got right up to the number of pegs, you're then just going to work even, backwards and forwards, for the rest of the rows that you need for your sleeve that you've already worked out. So I should have 26 rows of figure 8 stitch. 26 rows of figure 8 stitch. 32 rows altogether, including my cuff. As I said at the beginning, I'm not sure, I might need to add an extra couple of rows on for mine, but I'll have a look when I've done it and see. So do all your increases and then work even to complete the whole length of your sleeve, and then we will be ready to move on to casting on for the rest of the body section. So I will be back when I have made my sleeve. I thought I'd better explain something just to make it easier for you for when you come back to do your decreases. I'm sorry if there's a noise in the background, my washing machine is on. This is a sort of visual diagram of our sleeve. And as you can see, I haven't numbered all the rows, but this is the rib section. So you've got 6 rows of rib, row 1 here and row 6 here. And then we start our figure 8 stitch, and in my case I'm doing 32 rows of figure 8 stitch, and we're starting our increases on that first row, so basically row 7, we start our increases, then every other row. So my increases stop on row 21. So it's a good idea to have a little visual or jot it down somewhere what row your increases end up on, and then you work even for the rest of the sleeve, because then when you come back to decrease the other side, you know that you have to work in my case 12 rows of figure 8 stitch, and then I start decreasing back and then end up with the rib the other end. So you know, this is the increase going this way, and then coming back I have to do 12 rows of figure 8, and then I start doing my decreases and work back to the cuff. So you can take a screenshot of this if you like. It's not the best diagram, but hopefully it shows you, just keep track of what row you end your increases on, and then you can work out how many rows you need to knit coming back before you start your decreases the other way. Okay, so I've finished knitting my sleeve now, and I have measured this, and it is the length which I wanted it, which is 17 inches, I believe. I did actually add an extra row. I was going to do 32, but then I added an extra row because I wanted to finish up this end of the loom so that I could do my increases, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to increase the rest of this to make the body section once you finish the sleeve. And to do that, it's actually quite easy. So we're just going to wrap each peg once and knit off exactly the same as you did for the other increases, except we're just going to go all the way around to the last peg, adding all these on, and then we'll work our body section for however wide you wanted that to be. So in my case it was, I believe, 20 inches. Let me just grab my piece of paper here. Yeah, so I'm going to knit 20 inches. So what you're doing now is you've knitted this sleeve, and now we're casting on all the extra pegs to do the body section of our back, of the back of our cardigans, and then we're going to knit all the way across here, and then we're going to remove these extra pegs, but we'll just concentrate on doing this bit for now. So what you can do is cast on all the extra pegs right the way around to the last one, and then you're going to knit backwards and forwards round the loom, doing your figure of 8 stitches before, and you're going to do that for whatever the width was that you originally decided on. So in my case it's going to be 20 inches, and then when we've done that we'll come back and cast off again for the other sleeve. Okay, we are back, and we have now knitted the entire back section of this, and I have measured this, and it's 20 inches, which is what I wanted it. So we've done the sleeve, we've increased all of our pegs here, and then we've knitted across the back section. So we're now ready to decrease again to make the other sleeve. Now when you are doing this, before you do anything at all, the first thing you need to do is make sure that your working yarn is on this side of or the opposite side to where you started. This is where I cast on originally for my sleeve, so I need to make sure that my working yarn is opposite to that, because we need to decrease these pegs back round to where the sleeve was. And the next thing you need to do is find out the peg where your sleeve ended. So my sleeve was 20 pegs. So I basically need to count around 20 pegs. 1, 2, 20, and I would strongly advise that you put a marker on that stitch so that when you come back round, you don't accidentally remove too many. So find a stitch marker here. I'm going to go round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and I'm just going to literally pop that on there, and then see, there it is. so that I don't accidentally remove that one, because that's the first peg of the sleeve. So to decrease, and I've lost my knitting book, one moment. Okay, so to decrease now, the word I'm going to give you for this is loose. This really has to be done loose. Otherwise what happens is the side of your work will start to kind of bunch up like this and become very tight. And you need this to be as loose as possible so that the whole thing stays nice and even. So when you're doing these cast off stitches, really work loosely. So how you're going to cast off, remember we're going to go all the way around here, back round to where that marker was. We're going to knit the first peg, that, knit the next peg, that, and then you're going to take this off here and put it here. So you've emptied that one. Knit off that one, and then you're going to lift that back up and put it back over here. Don't tighten these up particularly, leave them loose. You have to be careful that they don't fall off the peg, but yeah, keep them loose. So now you've removed one peg, so you're going to go to the next one, knit off, lift this, put it on here, knit that off, lift that one, move it across. Okay, one more time. So we go to the next peg, knit that off, lift it, put it over here, knit that off, lift it, move it back over, and then your working yarn is here and you're ready to knit off the next page. So you're going to do that all the way around to, but not including the stitch that you put the marker on, and then I'll come back. So as you can see, I've now cast off all these extra pegs, and here's the side, and you can see it's kind of smooth and flat and all bunched up. And now all the pegs that I have left on here are the 20 pegs that were the widest point of my sleeve. So what you're going to do now is work in reverse. So originally you increased your sleeve stitches, now you're going to decrease. Excuse me. So this is where that chart that you made before comes in very handy. So I've cast off all these extra stitches back down to where my sleeve should start, and now I'm going to knit 12 rows. I marked on here that I need to knit 12 rows before I start my decreases on the sleeve. So you're basically going to work in reverse to what you did for the other way. So originally we cast on, in my case I cast on 12 pegs, and then I had 12 pegs cast on for the cuff. Then I increased, and then I cast on all the extra, and then I worked even, sorry, I'm confusing myself now. Then I worked even, and then I cast on all the extra pegs to do the side. So now we've cast off all those extra pegs. Now I need to work even for the number of rows that I put on here, which was 12. And then I'm going to start doing decreases until I've got down to 12 pegs again, which is what I started with originally. And then I'll work the cuff. So that's all you're going to do now. You're going to work even for the number of rows that you have marked down. Then you're going to decrease one every other row, the same way that you did when you increased them, one every other row, until you get down to the number of pegs that you used your cuff, which in my case was 6. And then you're going to work your, 12, and then you're going to work 6 rows of cuff, and then you're going to cast off in the same way that you cast off just now for those other pegs, and that will be the whole of the back of your cardigan done, and we're ready to move on to the front. So the front section. So I will come back when I have knitted my other sleeve. Right, so I have now finished my entire back panel of my cardigan, so it's kind of scrunched up, but let me show you. So we've got the sleeve where we cast on, gradual extension, increases rather. This is the top of the cardigan going along here, and this is where we increased to make the length of the cardigan. I'm working across the back here to the other sleeve. This is where we cast off again, and there's the other sleeve. So that's the whole thing, and this is where like the top will be here. So let me show you how you do the fronts. So with the front sections, as I said right at the beginning, you should have worked out what size to make them, but in case you haven't, sorry about the sun, it's really sunny here. It's gone from being quite cloudy when I started this cardigan to being really sunny now, but anyway, hopefully you can see this. So with your fronts, just to recap, you want to take the back measurement you had, which for me was 20 inches, and then you want to half that, so for me 10, and then take off a couple of inches because you need to allow for space for the neck. So I'm going to make each of my fronts 8 inches each. So the way that you do them, what you need to remember to do is you don't want to be doing them both coming from here around, you know, on the same side of the loom, because what you'll end up with then is two matching pieces instead of one for one side of your cardigan and one for the other. The figure of 8 stitch is reasonably reversible, but not quite. There is a very subtle difference, so it's probably much better to just make one, you know, for each side rather than make them on both the same size and then hope they look okay. And the easiest way to do that is to basically start one of your front panels on this side of the anchor peg going this way, and then the other one on this side of the anchor peg going this way. So on one of your fronts you will start your sleeve here as before, cast on the cuff, work the increases, work the rest of the sleeve, and then cast on all of the pegs to make the full length of the cardigan, and then knit the front measurement, which as I said was 8 inches for me, and then cast off. And then on for the other side of your, for the other front panel, you want to cast on going this way from the anchor peg, cast on your sleeve, work the cuff, do the increases, work even, increase to the whole loom, work the other front panel, another 8 inches, and cast off. Then you'll have two front panels for your cardigan, which will be one for one side and one for the other, and work perfectly. So I'm not going to show you all the knitting because obviously it's exactly the same as when we made the back, but just bear that in mind. You want to make one of them going this way from this side of the anchor peg, and the other one going this way from that side of the anchor peg. And I'll come back when I have made both my fronts and we're ready to sew this thing together. I thought I would just quickly explain about the front pieces while I'm in the middle of doing mine. So what you can see here is, holding my camera, so this is difficult. Here's my sleeve, the bottom of my sleeve. So in this case I cast on from this end here to knit my cuff, and then knitted the sleeve, did all the increases, and then I increased to the rest of the loom, and I'm now knitting the 8 inches I need for the front panel. And then what I will do is then cast that off, and then when I come to knit the other front panel, I will cast on from here for the cuff and go this way. So in this one I've gone cast on here and knitted this way and done all my increases this way, and when I come to knit the other front panel I will cast on here and knit this way and do all my increases that way. So I just thought I'd just quickly demonstrate that so it's clear. Okay, so we have finished and both the front panels are now done. As you can see, I've already pinned this one in place here along the sleeves. So what you're going to do is you're going to line up your front panels with your back panel here, and you'll have this little gap here which is sort of the neck. It's a bit scrunched up, which is why it's not lying flat, but as you can see I've pinned this one in place already. And then what you're going to do is, once you've pinned everything's all matched up, the ends of the sleeves and so on, what you're going to do then is join this. Now how you join it is entirely up to you. I haven't actually decided how I'm going to do mine yet. You can use a mattress stitch, which you do from the right side, so you put the wrong sides together and then you sew on this side, and you're going to sew up the side here, along the arm, and then along the top to obviously the end here. So basically up the sides, along the bottom of the arm, along the top of the arm, all the way to the neckline here. Or you can put the right sides together and then crochet, or you can whip stitch it together, whichever method you prefer. And then that's pretty much it. As you can see, if you cast off nice and loosely, you do actually get a nice edge along the front here. And because the figure of 8 stitch doesn't actually really curl, you could in fact just leave it like this. You don't really need to do anything else to it once you've sewed it together, because there's no curling, and the edging along the sides of the front where you cast off is actually a really nice edge. So you can just leave it like this once it's done, or if you wanted to, you could in fact get I would probably use about a 7mm crochet hook and just do maybe a couple of rows of single crochet around the sides, around the bottom, and just around the neckline here. You could do that if you wanted to, but as I say, it's not really necessary. I probably won't even do it with mine because I think it just looks fine as it is. So yeah, that's it. That's your finished cardigan. Very simple, very easy. It's a good sort of beginner project to do because there's no complicated decreases or anything like that. You know, you're just casting off and casting on really. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back again soon for another project. Bye!